last class, let me just go back to the PowerPoint slideshow, starting from current slide. Okay. Let me just go back one slide. So that's what we did in last class. We talked about, no, not this one, previous one. We talked about logical data model. We define a primary key, foreign key, right? And then we talk about how relational database can allow us to navigate from one record to another record without using pointers, right? So how are we going to develop relational database? To do that, we need tools. Okay, the first tool we need is, of course, a program for us to create database. And that program is called DBMS, stands for Database Management Systems. So that is a program for us to create a database, to manage database, and also secure databases, right? And an example of database relational DBMS include Microsoft Access, Oracle is kind of like representing two extreme ends of relational database management systems. Somewhere in the middle, we have Microsoft SQL Server and MySQL, which is open source software to create relational databases. Okay, and then we need programming languages, right? So in the old days, 1960s, 70s, and 80s, we pretty much have to use COBOL programming language to program, to create database, to manage database, to do anything. We have to use COBOL. But nowadays, we're using so-called structured query language, right? So that's what I think I mentioned that on Wednesday. Now, what about the process? What process do we need to follow to develop a new database? So basically, it's a three-step process. You see my mouse moving, can you? Yeah. So first step is also called using so-called business data model, and sometimes we call that conceptual data model, to capture data requirements from users. Okay, and then we translate that conceptual data model into logical data model. Now, logical data model, remember that is a framework for us to organize records, right? So it's actually how the database is created. Okay, so you can say that logical data model is a kind of a specification for database to be designed. And then finally, you're using SQL to create actual database, which we can call that step as implementation of a logical data model into database. Okay, so regarding the step one, capture data requirements into business data model. Essentially, that kind of boils down to three different activities. The first activity is identify the objects, business objects, for which we need to make observations, and we need to keep record of the observations. Okay, so let me give you a few examples of objects here. So for example, in the student registration system, we're talking about the business objects like student, instructors, classrooms, courses, classes, right? Buildings. Okay, and then let's pick up another example. Say in a small bank system, the banking system, the business objects that we need to have data for will include customers, accounts, transactions. John Morgan, you come late, right? So your password for attendance is online. Yeah. So just use a microphone to talk to me, because I may not be able to see quick enough to capture your text when I do lecture.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then so the bank system, like customers, accounts, transactions, what else? Employees, branches, right? And then ATMs. So all those are business objects, okay? And then we need to have data for. Okay? So just remember that objects can be tangible, can be intangible. So things like things we can see, we can observe, we can touch are tangible things. like people, buildings, equipment, those are tangible things. But sometimes objects can be intangible, like maybe just like concept, like meetings, like events, like account, okay, and like order. Those are not, it's not tangible. You cannot observe it, okay? On the courses, like catalog entry. So all those are objects that cannot be observed, cannot be seen by our eyes, okay? So they are intangible things. And just to make sure that you don't confuse objects with something like a measurement. For example, temperature. Is temperature object? Temperature is not object. Temperature is just like, it's just like attribute of something. For example, temperature of air, or temperature of water, or temperature of your desk. So temperature is actually attribute or characteristics of something. So the second thing you will want to identify is, after you identify the objects, you want to identify for each one, you want to identify what characteristics or what dimensions you want to make observations. Or in other words, what are attributes of each object, okay? And that, so basically that decide what should be observed. So regarding that, we'll just come back to the attributes second, and I have several requirements for that too. And then the third step will be identify the relationships. So relationships, of course, in the real world, objects are related. For example, student and the class. Student takes class, right? So the relationship is takes, right? And customers and accounts. Customer owns accounts. So that's a relationship, right? Customers and orders. Customer takes orders. So that is relationship, right? And account and the transactions. Account has transactions, or transactions occurs under account. So that is relationship between account and transactions, right? What about employee and transactions? Employee help transactions, right? Employee assist in transactions. So there will be relationship between employee and transactions. So the third step is identify the relationships. And after you identified all these objects, attributes, and the relationships, then you can draw something called entity relationship diagram or class diagram to capture as a representation of your data requirements or business data. Does anybody have a question? Okay. Now, second step is to convert your business data model into logical data model. So for that, you basically have a bunch of rules you need to follow. Okay. So for example, we talk about duplicate primary key values into foreign key ones, right? And how do we do that? That depends on some kind of a mechanical rules. Okay, so we will learn those rules along the way. And then finally, we're using programming language such as SQL to implement logical data model into database. So that is time we'll be using real DBMS to create a database. Okay, and we'll speak SQL too. All right. And just let you know that we have two types of models, okay? So you understand which is for which. So there's a business or conceptual data model, and that is for data requirements, for capturing data requirements. And there's a logical data model that is for like a blueprint for database development, just like a specification for database to be developed, okay? And all records will be organized into a database according to a logical data model. So that is second model, okay? And when we talk about the model, just always remember that we have to take an abstract view or abstract or simplified representation of realities, because reality is very complicated. We can only observe, we can only take what is essential, not ignore unessential stuff, okay? Now, in this class, we'll be talking about entity relationship diagram exclusively. We already talked about that. Okay, so here is the example of relationship diagram, and we are going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so regarding how do we identify objects, and we already said objects can be tangible or intangible. We already said that, right? And objects must be observable at one instant in time. So if something is just, you cannot make observations at any point in time, then that is not object. Okay, and objects must have multiple attributes, dimensions to be observed. So, for example, when we say temperature, of course, temperature, blood pressure, or those are attributes for something, but they're not objects. Okay, and what about city and the state? Well, that is sometimes not easy to decide whether city or state could be treated as objects. And if you treat a city as just like a single name, then that's probably just attribute for student or for customer or for employee. However, if you're treating city as like objects that you want to have data, have table for example, city has a name, has a location, has a population, has those things you want to record all that about the cities, then you probably will make city as object too. Okay, so those are just like a brief guideline. Michael, password is online. You come very late. All right. Okay. Yeah. So just make sure next time don't be so late because we're already almost like 20 minutes in the class. Now, identified attributes, and I said attributes are just some kind of like dimensions or characteristics or properties of object to be, but typically each object, some object may have a lot of things. For example, our human being, like a student, right? A student have a name, have ID, have an address, has a phone number, all those will be attributes. However, what about their height? What about their color? Are they attributes? Of course they are attributes. However, some of these attributes may not be relevant to the problem you're trying to solve. So suppose we're designing a database for registration database. Then the registration database probably does not need to know student color, student height, and weight stuff, right? However, if you develop this database for a clinic, then the clinic will definitely need to know your height, your weight, your car, your some other, like a blood pressure, all those type of things. Okay, so just make sure the attributes must be relevant. That's the first thing. Second thing is attributes cannot be foreign, and that is, let me explain that. Okay, suppose you're creating account objects. Okay, account of course have account number, have account balance, have account type, right? Opening date or account status, and those will be the attributes for account. But what about account owner? What about account owner? And that is considered like a foreign attribute because we already have customer objects. Customer objects are going to have customer ID, customer name, all that, right? So so-called account owner, it might be just like those account like attribute, one of account attribute, like account ID, like a customer ID, right? So make sure when you're drawing entity relationship diagrams, those attributes, no attributes can be foreign, can be like attribute from another object. Okay, and the next requirement for attributes is attributes must be single valued. Okay, I think I mentioned that in the last class that when we're trying to duplicate a primary key of account number into customer table, and then what if a customer have multiple accounts? We cannot just simply say account 1, account 2. That would not be allowed. So all attributes must be single valued. Okay, so not composite. Composite things like a name include a full name, like a full name, like a first name, last name, and middle name, right? So that will make a big difference. So if you have attribute like a full name, then if somebody like put like a John Doe, that is one name, right? And what if the person write that as Doe, John? To me, to all human beings, we know that they are the same person, right? Have the same name. However, if you do that, spell out differently, put a comma or first name first, then the database will treat them as two different names. Okay, so make sure that all attribute values must be single value, not a composite, like full name or like address. Address also have street address, city, state, zip code, those composite, right? And multi-valued, so some attributes may be multi-valued. For example, student majors. Some students may have one major, some students may have no majors, but some other students may have multiple majors, maybe simultaneously doing, MIS and computer science at the same time, right? So in that case, if you have some kind of student, you say more majors, you put like IS, CS, that would not be acceptable to relational database. Okay, so the best way to handle that is making sure that those attribute cannot be multi-valued. How do we do that in that case? Well, we will learn how to do that. We basically will use something or concept called weak entities to handle that. Okay, and then okay, for regarding attributes, one more thing about that is so some attributes like employee ID or account number, they're just have no meaning. They're just there to identifying something. So they're identifying attribute. Account number, what does it mean? Account number means account number is just simply means is used to identify each account, right? Employee ID. Okay, so those attributes will be marked as ID attribute. Okay. But then all other attributes we actually describe in attributes. For example, an employee name, an employee job, employee salary, which not each of them will have a meaning to describing one aspect of employee. So for those attributes, we call them as describing attributes. And for describing attributes, we use two symbols to signify whether the attribute is required or optional. We use star to signal that attribute is required. So that means when I record that attribute, I must have a value for it. Okay, so I cannot leave it empty. But then I can also put O in front of it. That means just those attribute is optional. All right. So for example, for employee must have a full name, might have a first name, last name, right? And must have maybe like like address. However, the employee job may not be assigned, so maybe job attribute may be optional for some time. Okay, so you have to think about when you're designing database, you have to think about database has to survive for a long period of time, right? So for any period, for any time, if the attribute can be optional, then you will use O to indicate that. If the attribute must be there when you create this record, then you start to represent that. Okay. And then regarding the relationship, how to identify relationships, and this is probably the most difficult part when you're doing like beginners to designing the new database. So how do we know that these two objects must be related? Okay. So what I want you to do is just follow these three heuristics. The first heuristic is that objects, if you think they are related, then there must be a verb to connect them. There must be a verb to connect them. For example, customers and orders. Customers takes orders, right? So there's a verb connecting them. And then student and the class. Student takes class. Okay, so that indicate that student and class are related. Okay, if there are multiple verbs connecting two objects, then there's multiple connections, multiple relationships too. Okay, for example, so corporate. Let me think of a corporate settings that you have employees and the classes, right? Employee training, make like training classes. So some employees will teach class, some employees will take class. So in that case, we have two separate relationships: teaches and takes, two separate ones, right? And let me think of another example. So let's say, suppose we have student clubs. Okay, student clubs. We have employee. We have student clubs. We have some students simply serve on committees, right? And there may be also students who chair committees, right? Who are members of chair committees. So in that case, we have chair committees and serve on committees. There are two different verbs connecting student and the committees. So there will be two different relationships. Okay. And then second heuristic is you have to think, when I have this record in database, do I need to find the related records? Okay, for example, if I have an account record, do I need to find who owns the account? Do I need to find what transactions the account has? So if answer is yes, then definitely you are going to connect customers with account, and you're going to connect accounts with transactions. Okay, so think of that need. You have business need. You have business say, I need, for this record, I should be able to navigate to another record. And that the relationship can be established in that way. The third one is a little bit more difficult to understand. So that is about, so when you have a verb connecting two objects, and then sometimes we may need to keep track of data, keep data on those actions itself. If that is the case, then we are going to create some kind of like action object connecting the original two objects. Let me give you examples here. So let's say we have a relationship between customers and the products. The relationship is customer purchase products, right? Customer purchase products. Now the question, do you need to keep track of data on the purchase action itself? Probably yes, because we need to keep track of what time, what date, at what locations the customer has made the transactions, right? Has made the purchases. So in that case, we probably need to make the purchase as like X action to create another entity that cut in the middle between customer and product. So that is actually common sense. So we usually have some kind of object called orders, right? Customers connect to orders and orders connects to products. So in that case, orders is actually turned into objects from action words. So that is general case. So if you have a verbal connection, and then if you want to have data to keep track of the action itself, okay, like in the history, like what special data to describe the action itself, then you turn that action into like another object which cut in the middle between two other objects that action was connecting to. Okay, so I think that is just general guideline for relational for how to identify relationships. Okay, let me I'm going to skip and then going to go back to let's minimize that. I'm going to use data modeler. So at this point, everybody follow me to open up data modeler. Okay. Does anybody have questions? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay. Okay, so let's say after you, are you ready, everybody? Turn on your data modeler.
I can't download the data modeler because it says the site is having technical difficulties.
Who are you? Gino.
I was having the same problem, technical difficulties with the website.
With which website?
The Oracle website.
Yeah, Oracle saying it's down.
Nick, okay, Nick Peterson, okay.
Try hitting the backspace and then clicking it again. It worked for me.
Oh, when you log in, they have I think their account.
Different times, close the website, close the computer, retried it, nothing.
Okay. I don't know what to say because we need to move on. Let me see what else I can do. Do you have access to Teams? Let me see Teams. I created something called a 324 study group. Over there inside that, I think I put a bunch of files. Let me see whether I have just a second. So I can only give you directions. So this is just in case you still could not do. You should let me know way before the class to have these problems resolved before the class. At this point, everybody else, I think we have to move on. Let me just check manage teams. Let me see. Okay, let's see. Who has a problem?
I do.
I do as well.
Nick Peterson. Okay. Gino is already in the list. Nick Peterson. Let me see, is the list or not? Oh, I don't see that. Okay, so what am I going to do? So it's too late to do anything at this point, so you'll probably have to repeat this. This is the wrong one. 324 study group. Let me check. 324 manage teams. No, it's not in there. So nobody is that team yet. Okay, so do you guys have access to Microsoft Teams? This is what I would do. I will put.
I have Teams, but I don't have access to the classes.
You have access to the class. Okay.
No, I don't have access to the class. I have one other class, but not this class. So Teams.
Okay. Yeah, if you use Microsoft Teams, then you should be able to see a team, which I'm going to put you into that team, and then I will put like all the files into Microsoft Teams, so you can download it from there. Okay. So for the next half an hour, I guess you probably just have to just observe what we do, and then I have recordings, and then just make sure you follow the recordings after the class to finish this exercise. Okay, how's that? Nick?
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we unfortunately we could not wait for you to download. It should be straightforward. There's only glitch is that when you log in, they may give you something say some kind of wrong, but then when you go press back button, and then you should be able to download from that. Okay, and then my PowerPoint toward the end of my PowerPoint actually give you some instructions on how to install this. I think, yeah, how to install, how to make the access more convenient. Okay, so everybody, sorry for the interruption. Now let's say what do we need to do. First of all, you look at there's left-hand side, you have a logical model, right? And also there's relational model. This is actually wrong name for that. What they mean, the logical data model is actually business data model. Okay, this software was created from another piece of high-end enterprise software called Oracle Designer. We used to teach that, but then but later we found that this is more convenient, so you can just easily download. But then skill can be transferable to Oracle Designer. Okay, so this is actually called a conceptual data model or business data model. Okay, so you click the plus sign in front of that. All right, and then after that you see entities, relations, so on and so forth. Right now, also views and sub-views. Okay, so what do we need is we are going to create just one sub-view for each entity relationship diagram. So right mouse click on that, everybody, press new sub-view. And then then you will be open up a canvas for you to draw diagrams. Does everybody follow me? Ask me, stop me if you have a question, you have a problem, okay? After you have this canvas, then we are going to pick up entity and the relationship. So let's do entity first, okay? So first entity, click on that. Let's just say we will do, say, customer. Give a name, just make sure it's a one-word name. Sometimes you may also optionally put like a short word, like say cost, okay? Short name. Simple, right? And then you click on the attributes tab. Left-hand side, click attributes. And here we are going to put a bunch of attributes, create a bunch of attributes, okay? So first attribute, say customer ID, okay? Then we'll choose
Sorry to
one.
interrupt.
Oh, say that again.
Sorry to interrupt, but when you clicked on subviews and then the thing popped up, when you click the screen, nothing pops up for me, like take you to the
Okay.
attributes.
Just a second, let me do it again. Okay, so just say right mouse click on that, right?
Right
Choose
mouse, yeah.
New subview, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you should be able to see the screen on the on your right, the main screen. Okay, so I have a couple of tabs here. See, I can close those. Okay,
For some
so
reason it doesn't pop up for me. I don't know why. I have the logical subview
yeah,
thing.
you're on the logical model, and then on the subviews. Okay, and then just say right mouse click on that. It should bring up that, and you can also check view to see whether subview, anything that is not is hidden.
I get to that point, but my mouse isn't like, my cursor isn't like yours. It's not like, it doesn't allow me to click or anything.
Mine is also like that too.
You have to pick up images. You have to go to the toolbar. You see the toolbar here. Okay. Okay. Select one. Select new entity, and then you click on it. Got it?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So now let's do it again. Okay. Let's say I will do customer, or just small letter, capital, or just regular word, small, start with capital, customer, and the short name, say cost. Okay. Now let's do attributes. Okay. So the first attribute is customer ID. And then we'll choose logical. So I'll explain domain. Domain is just simply a possible set of possible values. So if you have attributes like a state, like a grade, they have only fixed set of values, right? Or grade can be A, B, C, D, F, right? Or state can be only like 1 of 50 states, right? So that will give you like fixed values. But now we're choosing just logical. And then you decide what kind of data for customer IDs. Let's just say I want to use character char, okay? Char. And then how many chars? So let's just say for customer ID, we use 11 chars. 11 chars, okay? And since this attribute is ID attribute, so we'll check that. So it's not describing attribute. Check primary UID, and then press apply. So now this attribute will be added, okay? Now let's do it again. Let's do another one. Let's say this time I will do last name, and also logical, and also characters. And let's just say for last name, I will have to think about, people have long names like Indians and Hawaiians. So I may make like 45 characters, okay? So then you can decide whether last name is required or not. Let's just say that's required, okay, mandatory, okay?
I'm sorry to interrupt you again, Professor.
Yeah.
So I got to that point where I brought up where we got to last time. I don't see attributes on my left where you're underneath general. It doesn't say attributes for me. I don't see that.
Okay, so let me save that first, just a second. Okay, so now if you, did you select these new entities?
Yeah, I selected new entities and then it allowed for the screen to pop up, but then it doesn't seem like I have the same options as you on the left.
Did you put like a new view or new entities?
That might have been a mistake. Let me see. Let me
Show
try
you
that again.
Yeah, new entities, please.
Mine
Okay,
isn't
so-
allowing me to name my attribute.
Say it again.
Mine isn't allowing me to name my attribute.
Oh, does not allow you to name attribute? Okay, let me just go back here. So click on here, let's say go to attributes, right? So you should be able to select attribute and then change this attribute here on your right. You see that? Did you see this?
Yeah, mine's just not allowing me to do that.
Okay, so follow me. If you your screen, just drag this screen, make sure it's large enough so that you can see the middle part. So drag this screen so that you can have three sections. There's left column, and then the middle part, and then the right part. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Got it?
Even in my screen looks just like yours right now, but under the attribute properties in the name, it's not allowing me to click on it.
Really? Can you add a new one? Go to new, add a new one.
Oh, wait. All right. Sorry. Now I see it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else has a question, problems? So
Where
just
did you see avenue? Oh, wait. Okay, thank you. Never mind. Got it.
Got it. Okay, good. All right, so we have 2 attributes added. Now let's just add one more, okay? So let's say this time I will go to first name. First name, logical, and then also characters, and I will use 45 characters. But this time I will not check set for characters charts, okay? I will not check mandatory. So if you're not checking it, that means that's optional. So that means in the database, the attribute of the column for last first name can be optional, okay? So just apply, and now we have 3 attributes created. Got it?
Question: Did you make that one primary UID?
Primary UID is the custom ID. Yeah, custom ID, we check that as a primary UID. Just check that.
Okay.
Yeah. So any ID attributes, just check primary UID. All right, everybody is okay? Okay, now let's do another one. The second one, just make sure you select new entity. And then this one, I will do account. Okay. And then say ACCT. And then regarding attributes, I'm going to create account number. Account number is characters. I'm going to use account number just as numeric. Okay, numeric. So I'm going to introduce 2 different kinds of numbers. Numeric. Okay. So account number is, let's say, 12 letters, 12 numbers, and there's no decimal place, so that's a 0. So just leave that 0 or empty. Okay, so that means you can have 12 numbers to make up account number. And then let's check primary UID 2. Okay, and then apply. Okay, and then we create the second one. Let's say account type, ACCT type. So type is a checking account, savings account, or CD account. So I will use char for that, and maybe 15 characters. Okay, so for that account type, let's just say that's required, mandatory. And the press apply. Okay, and then let's do balance. Account balance. So account balance is, of course, is numeric. So in this case, we may have 2 decimal places. Okay, 2 decimal places. And then you have to consider what is the number of digits, including decimal places. Let's just say I will put 7 here. So what does it mean is that somebody's balance can have up to $99,999.99. So that is the maximum number you can put into a balance, because you have 5 integer parts, right? 5 integer parts, so you can have up to $99,999. Okay, and then let's say that is the balance maybe not required, so it's optional, so we leave it empty. Okay, so 2 is that decimal place, but the 7 including 2. 7 is including the 2. So then there's only 5 digits for whole numbers and 2 digits for decimal place. Okay, let's do one more. Let's just say, each account has open date. So account open date. So open date is data time. So let's choose date. Okay. And Oracle date is just like a data time, which includes date and time all together. So let's say data open date is required. All right, and then press apply. Okay, there we go. We have 1. And then let's do one more. Okay, let's just do transactions. Okay, transactions. For attribute, let's just say a transaction ID, TID, which is some kind of a characters. Let's just say, or maybe numeric or numeric. Okay. And then how many digits? Of course, we have to have a longer number than account because each account may have many transactions. So I will go to like maybe even 18. Okay. And then that's ID. Okay. And apply. And let's do again. Let's say we have transaction type, transaction date, the transaction date. So that's logical. And then that's data time. And that is, let's just say maybe required transaction date. All right, I'm going to stop that. And now let's do relationships. Okay, so for relationship, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 of this to choose from, but actually you just need one, okay? Any one of them will be fine. So let's just use the first one. First one, okay, so let's say click at the beginning, that's a source, and click at the target. And now you have a dialog to come up, ask you to define the relationships. So first of all, let's give a name. The name I can use that to say owns, right? So let's just say customer owns account. Okay, so let's use that verb to describe that. And that is not essential part. Essential part is these two. One is called what is called cardinality, mapping cardinality. So this is what you need to choose. You can choose either one or this. The star. Star means many. One or star. So what does it mean is this. One customer can have how many accounts in general, okay? Not specific, in general. How many accounts can the customer have? So if you just say one, that means each customer can have at most one account. That's it, okay? But of course, that is restricted, right? So you should allow customer to have multiple accounts. So if that is the case, you will choose star, this Crawford here, okay? And then you do the same thing for account. Each account can have how many owners? Each account can have how many owners? How many? Well, each account, sometimes account can maybe just one owner, but sometimes account may have several joint owners, husband and wives, right? Or maybe partners. So in general, this could be many too, okay? So that's the first thing you want to decide, what is the mapping cardinality, and then we'll show you the result, okay? And then there's also something called optional. So what does that mean is, does every customer must have an account? Must every customer have an account? Well, if you say yes, that means when you create a customer record, you must have an account record ready. But maybe that's too restrictive. You can say no, I can have a customer record to be created first, and then I create an account later. So that in that case, so before the customer have an account, then the customer does not have an account. So this is optional. So maybe source is optional. And ask the same question, does every account have to have a customer? Of course. Otherwise, you have like a orphan account, right? And the bank, of course, cannot have orphan account. So in this case, I will not check this. I will make sure that account must have owner. Does it make sense? So this is called optionality. And after that, you're ready to dismiss this dialog box, and you get this so-called relationship. This shows that customer and the account has many to manage relationship, and the customer side is optional. This is dashed. You see that? Now let's do it again between accounts and the transactions. Okay. Account and transaction. So I'm going to use the same relationship here. So click on the source, which is account, and click on transactions, target. Okay, so let's just say this word is has. All right, so we'll just 2 more minutes. I think 1 more minute we should be able to finish. So then you ask, how many transactions can account have? Many, right? So that's just many here. On the other hand, each transaction happens on the with how many account. Each transaction, of course, every transaction will be conducted on the one account. So that's one only. Okay. So you may ask, what about those like a transfer transactions? Transfer transaction in a bank, I believe they split into 2 different transactions. One on each account. One is credit, one is debit. Okay. So in this case, transaction, just each transaction has only one account. Okay. Now, optionality, does every account must have transactions? Not necessarily. So maybe some account never have transactions, right? After it's open, it's just like stay there for a long time. All right, and then targeted. What about transactions? We have transactions. Does have to have an account? Of course. So this is optional. Okay. So this is required. So that means transaction must have an account. So this cannot be optional. So this is unchecked means not optional. Press OK, and then you have this part of diagram finished. And that's how we use diagram, use ERD to develop a business data model. Now let me tell you how you're going to submit your homework. Okay, so there are two ways you can submit this. You can use just simply snipping tool, and then say new, right? And then you can just cut this picture, and then submit this picture to me. Okay, and this is one way. You just use snipping tool. Don't save that. Another way, you can just go to file and then print diagrams, and then you can print the image file, and then you can submit that image too. Okay. Now, what if I want to submit the whole thing, everything, the project? And that is what you have to do. You exit this first and save. And I'm going to save to my desktop. Okay, so let's just say this is bank. Okay, and save that. And there get some kind of error message sometimes. Okay, should be okay. All right, and then you can exit this out. And then after you get to that, you will see your desktop. Your desktop should have two files. One is the bank.dmd. Another one is the bank photo. So when you submit, you have to submit both. So let me tell you how to do that. So you basically just create a new folder. Maybe say this is the homework 1, all right? Homework 1. And then you put both files inside. Okay, and then you go to right mouse click on the photo you just created, and then send it to compressed photo. And that is a file you can submit to eCourse. Get that? That's a file you can submit to eCourse. All right, so you have 3 different ways to submit. For this homework, I just need to save the pictures. So you can just use a snipping tool or save or print the images to submit the images. You do not need to submit this whole project to me. Okay, but just let you know that you can submit the whole project for some other things. All right, anybody has questions? Sorry for a little bit late. I think I overused 5-6 minutes. For 2 students who had trouble with data model, I will send you an email, tell you how to go to download. All right.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
How soon will you be posting like the lectures for the videos, like the recording for this class, for this one?
The video will be available, should be available by tonight.
Okay, and just to confirm, this is the like hands-on homework assignment that will be due Monday?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Yeah.